So hello everyone, welcome to session 2 of day 3 of our retreat on the Bodhicitta practice. It's always a bit round about this point in the retreat that I start having these deep feelings of what can we possibly do in such a short period of time? There's so much we could unpack, there's so much we could explore, we need about 2 months. But I've kind of noticed that happens around about this point. So we'll do what we can in the time. Okay, so I think today again, let's start with a short period of meditation just to help us settle and tune into the theme of the retreat again. When I was about 5, there was a radio program called Listen with Mother from the BBC. And it would always start with, if you're sitting comfortably, then I'll begin. So, if you're sitting comfortably, I'll begin. There's something very reassuring about it at the time. It's stayed with me. So let's start by taking a minute or two just to let ourselves settle. To fully inhabit this present moment. This place where we are, this body. Now letting awareness and energy move down through the body. So we feel our contact with the earth. And then feeling, imagining awareness and energy going down into the earth. Really rooting ourselves, anchoring ourselves. And from there, letting the body rise up, feeling, imagining the spine opening, there's the stability and relaxed weight of the lower body, and lightness, brightness, awareness. Of the upper body reaching towards the sky. For a minute, let's just move between those two experiences. Tasting the relaxation, stability, connected with the earth and the lightness, freedom, awareness, connected with the sky. And as we move between them, let's see if we can bring them together. It's a sense of stable, relaxed, bright awareness. And with that, being aware of what's happening in the body, the sensations and feelings. Sensations arising, experienced with kindly awareness, and then allowed to transform, to flow into the next experience. Nothing held on to, everything cared for. Let's just take a little time to keep experiencing the body in that way. So whatever arises, there's care, there's kindness. And yet, nothing needs to stick. Letting experience just flow. Not caught up. Now in the same way, paying particular attention to the breathing. So kindly, as much as possible, even loving awareness, just allowing the breathing to flow, one experience to the next. Now let's widen out that kindly awareness a little. And be aware of all of us participating in this meditation. All breathing. And in one way, we're all in our different spaces all around the world. But we're all connected, and not just through Zoom. As we saw, on a mental level, we all meet. So having a sense of all of us breathing together. All with as much kindly awareness as we can find. All part of one meditation. Kindly awareness of the breath. And with each in-breath, you can have a sense of the support of all of us practicing together. Draw on our collective strength. All those many hundreds of years of practice we have between us. And with each out-breath, sense of sending out love, sending out care for the world. Can be to a particular situation, someone you're practicing for, or it can just be sending kindness, sending love. Wherever it's needed. It's needed everywhere. Now, it's relaxing any particular effort, just aware experience. If the meditation carries on by itself, that's okay. Before we end the meditation, making sure we're well grounded, and dedicating the merits, sharing the benefits. Just go through. Okay, so yesterday we were looking at refuge, and in session 3 I was talking about different relationships that you could have to the refuge, and therefore different ways in which you can practice. I was using Subhuti's 3 myths of the spiritual life as a basis for talking about that. There's a lot more I could have said, particularly on self-discovery, the third one. But if there's time, we might come back to it a little later in the retreat, and I've got 1 or 2 questions about it. But in this session, I'd like to move on and start looking at the next part of the practice, which is section 3, numbered as. And in the version that Parami wrote up after talking to Bhante, She says, one cultivates a very powerful feeling of empathy with all beings, reflecting that one's life is inextricably bound up with that of all other beings. So that reflection in itself won't necessarily cultivate empathy. It's, in a way, that's more a cultivation of sort of solidarity, in a way. So we're moving into the compassion aspect of the practice, having firmly established ourselves in the refuge. So, yeah, the refuge may be doing the practice rather than us in the best scenario. So we've really drawn on those resources. We've really done work before we start turning towards suffering. With the blue sky, there's been a kind of an opening out and a change of perspective, so that we're not simply kind of everyday me preparing to do battle with all the suffering in the world. And then we've drawn on resources that we have in terms of grounding and connection with a sense of other practitioners, and centrally our connection with the refuge. So it's on that basis that we're then starting to turn towards suffering. And there's a lot that we could explore around all this, a lot of very practical and useful areas. And I think there's been quite a lot of discussion amongst some of the meditation teachers within Triratna over recent times around this sort of area of empathy, compassion, effective ways of turning towards suffering. And I think it's very much work in progress, and I feel like I'm still exploring and trying to clarify best ways of approaching this thing for different kinds of people. Yeah, I feel like there's some useful distinctions that I still haven't quite got to. So this is very much sort of work in progress. So I hope you'll take it as an opportunity to explore this area with me, to explore your own experience and what works for you, what doesn't work for you. Yeah, to raise questions and say, I thought it was like this, and how does that work? Yeah, so we're advancing the understanding of the order through our retreat, at least to some degree. Okay, I think I want to approach it with there was a short question. Should have somewhere here. Oh, yes. Yes, I thought this might take us into the area a bit, but it also relates back a little bit to what we were talking about yesterday. So this question is one of those very short, very simple, very basic questions that people often don't ask because they feel like they should know the answer, or they shouldn't ask this sort of question now they're an order member or whatever. But it's great. I really love those sorts of questions. So it's just this. How does opening the heart lead to safety and security? Will it not just lead to hurt? So that kind of encapsulates a lot of this area that has been under discussion. And it also encapsulates a lot of what goes on in us internally when we start opening out to life. It starts to feel like we're taking a risk. And yeah, sometimes we have opened out to life and it hasn't turned out well. And now we're once bitten, twice shy, and thinking, oh, I'm not sure I want to do that again. Maybe I'll just stay, safely within my ego bubble, and that's the place to be. So yeah, let's explore all this a little bit. So how does opening the heart lead to safety and security? Will it not just lead to hurt? If I remember rightly, and somebody going through the recordings can tell me I'm wrong, when I talked about this, it was actually mainly in the context of meditation, and it was in relation to the refuges. I was talking about opening our heart to the safety and security of the refuge. And that is something which is, you can say, is pretty unequivocally a good thing to do. In fact, one of the wonderful things about sadhana is that in sadhana, we call to mind, maybe we see, we feel ourselves in the presence of the refuge. We feel ourselves in the presence of the Yidam. And they are just pure love and compassion. Absolutely pure love and compassion. And it gives us a chance to train in opening our heart to the fullest possible extent under completely safe circumstances. There may be our psychological complexities which come into play, sure. But in itself, we're in a situation where we can express as much love as we like. Yeah? We don't need to hold anything back. We can express complete love and devotion for Amitabha, or Tara, or Padmasambhava, or Vajrasattva, whoever it is. Yeah? There is no risk. It's an absolute guarantee, all your money back in 90 days. There is nothing to lose. Yeah? You can completely commit to it. So you can actually have that experience of fully opening your heart and going for it and being as loving and devoted as you like. And on the other side, you can take what can sometimes feel like more of a risk of completely opening your heart and receiving that love and compassion. Just practicing letting it in, letting it in, letting it in. So I think that's the context in which I was talking. And yeah, I don't think that that's going to lead to hurt. Again, I'm interested if anybody feels like it does for them. But then there's the wider context, the more difficult context, which is that the Bodhicitta practice is asking us to open our hearts not just to some archetypal bodhisattva. It's asking us to open our heart to famine and refugees and our suffering family member and all kinds of other things. So that's something else again, isn't it? As we know. But still, I suggest to you that something in our heart actually really, really does want to open. I personally feel that, sometimes if I open my heart to suffering, there's some pain there. But the worst thing, the only thing that's worse than that, is living with a closed heart. That's the real suffering. That's the one we really want to avoid. And the Buddhist tradition is encouraging us to open our heart mind. Yeah, this is the blue sky is leading us, to open our heart, to open into sort of wider space. And yeah, if we want to, encapsulate how Buddhism is trying to lead us out of selfing and into experience beyond duality, all that is it's a shift of understanding, it's a shift of awareness, but it's also a heart movement. But yes, my basic point, I suppose, is that being a sealed unit is itself suffering. Suffering is often talked about in the Buddhist tradition in terms of the three kinds of dukkha. So there's dukkha, which is the experience of suffering that we all recognize as suffering. So, having a bad liver, or being in a car accident, or being so depressed you can't get out of bed in the morning. Then there's viparinama dukkha, which is the suffering of change, the fact that when we cling on to things, because everything arises in dependence on condition, at some point that's going to change. And when that changes, if we're attached, there's inevitably the friction between what we want to be happening and what is happening. And dukkha is basically the friction between those two things. But then the deepest level of dukkha is khandha dukkha or skandha dukkha, which is the dukkha of having identified with the five skandhas. So identified with what we usually think of as me. So with this, awareness has lost its freedom. It's lost track of how things are and has become identified, has made this body mind into me. And as soon as we create this sense of me, everything else is other. Everything else is out there. So everyone else is out there. The environment and everything is out there. And there's this barricade, there's a barrier. And that is sensed as the deepest level of dukkha, because it creates a sense of existential aloneness, isolation, longing to somehow be connected, united. To be fully in the flow of life. You don't feel fully in the flow of life because you're cut off. I mean, a good example of this, this is a crazy example in a way for you on retreat, because lots of you won't actually be watching this live, but if you're watching a recording of this, you can imagine it. A really good example is this Zoom screen that we're looking at. Yeah. So when we look at the screen, if you can see one, please look, and if you can't, just imagine, what there's like. So I've got you on gallery view, so I can see 24 of you plus me, and I can find that little box, which is the one that I think of as me. There's me in that box there. So you could all, just take a minute and find that little box that's you. Find that one. You might have to scroll through. If you haven't got your video on, or actually you've got a black space but it's got your name on, so that's your name. So that box is you, and none of the other boxes are you. Okay. So focus on you in your box, and maybe you'd like to wave to yourself. Let's all wave to ourselves in our box, right? So now, there's lots of waving going on, but actually, thank you, there was all that waving going on, but nobody was waving at us. They were all waving at them in their little box. Do you see what I mean? Yeah, they were focused on that little bit there, which is me in the box. And you notice how around the box that's me, there's kind of a little black line, or a thick black line, which separates out me and my box from all the other boxes. Yeah. And that's a useful thing to have. You know, if that weren't there, sort of one person's living room would sort of slightly blend into the next person's bedroom, and it would get a bit confusing. So it's useful to be able to make distinctions like that. So we need to be able to do it. But from another point of view, that black line around your box is like a wall. It's like a sort of barricade. It's like a sort of, you're in a prison cell. Yeah, you're stuck in your box. Yeah, in that 4% of your screen. Yeah. And that actually doesn't feel very good. If you feel into your heart, something in your heart goes, that's not right. Yeah. So we could also, from another point of view, rather than identifying with little me in my box there, we could open out and we could identify with the whole screen, of which we're now an integral part, or an important part. But let's just take in the whole screen for a minute. Here we all are together, all part of one screen. And actually there's just the screen and these different pictures. And if our conceptual mind doesn't come in at all, there's just one seamless field with all these wonderful different beings looking out at us. Yeah. And there doesn't have to be a real separation. Yes, we can make distinctions, but there can be all this openness and engagement with any of the boxes. Yeah. If we're not lost in our own box, we can flow freely between any part of the screen, just naturally, easily. Yeah. And we can feel a difference. So now we could wave at everyone that we can see. Let's all wave again. Yeah. So now this time, everyone's waving at us, and we're waving at everybody. Yeah. Yeah, you get the idea. It's different. It's really different. Okay, great. So that's the kind of, seems quite a good example of what we're looking for. Yeah, we just, yeah, sure, we want the freedom of mind, the freedom of heart to be able to encompass the whole of experience, and yes, to be able to move into any particular area of it. And yes, there's a part of it that we have, if you like, a particular kind of responsibility for. Yeah. But that doesn't mean we have to be separate, yeah, completely distinct and shut off from everyone else. And our heart actually rebels against that. So, yeah, we're looking for that. We're looking for that open-heartedness. So how are we doing? Yes, I think we might have a break here. I think that might be now that we've all kind of met fully in one set of screens. Let's take 20 minutes and then I'll come back and unfold a bit more about empathy and compassion and all that area. So by my watch, it's 8 minutes to. So let's come back at approximately 12 minutes past whatever hour it is with you. Yeah.
Hello, Vajragupta. It's Prasada Vajri.
I just have to tell you all something rather funny. In the email that was sent round, I was just looking at it, you know, from Adhisthana. It's got all the, you know, session by session now that you can watch. It talks about the Brahma Vikas. Because that's predictive text, having changed it from the Brahma Viharas. Anyway, it's just made me laugh. But perhaps it doesn't make you laugh.
Are you well, Vajragupta?
Yeah, use that mug. Hello, Prasada Vajri.
Hello there. Nice to see you. You're keeping well?
I am, yeah. How are you?
Yeah, keeping okay, up and down every day. But yeah, it's been really good, this Zoom, starting with lockdown.
Take part in things we might not.
Yeah, it's amazing. I've never been so active in the Sangha, and you know, leading meditation online, being in the chapter and everything on Zoom. It's fantastic.
That's lovely, isn't it?
What about you?
Yeah, it's well, it's pretty good. It's just that, yeah, I have to do a lot of classes and a lot of things to do with being chair. So actually, I probably have far too much Zoom to cope with, really. But
Yeah,
been a busy year.
well, it has been, funny enough. Yeah, it's interesting. Even though I haven't ventured very far.
How is your health, Prasada Vajri?
It's yeah, it's kind of since I've started going to the gym about 4 years ago, it's okay. You know, my stomach is always not very happy, but that's expected. I only have a third. But yeah, it's my joints still happily dislocate when they want to, but I learned to live with it and realize that it's one sensation after another, and I can deal with that. You know, it's if you don't identify with, you know, this is me and mine, then it's an experience that comes and goes. How long have you been chairman, Vajragupta?
Just coming up to 2 years now.
Oh, well, that's really good. Hmm. Tara is back at university. She's 19 now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. She'd spent the whole summer here, which was lovely.
Oh.
You both look very well, actually. Padmajata and Vajragupta.
You look very well too.
I think
Mm.
I've been practicing since lockdown so much more. I think it's just really made a difference to my whole life. It's just opened up my heart, and it's just like amazing. I'm like virtually like, it sounds a bit strange, but I'm feeling like happy all the time, even if there is pain, and just feel like having been with the experience of what COVID actually can do as a doctor. It's been quite eye-opener how much suffering there is actually.
Mm. Mm.
And
You carried on working at home then, Prasada
I
Vadri,
was
as a
shielding.
home doctor.
I was shielding most of the time.
You were shielding, right? Yeah.
But all doctors have been mainly working from home, doing Zoom consultations.
Right, right. Yeah, and you know, I work in the NHS and as a hospital social worker, so actually most of the time we've been in. We were held back a bit from the wards as the reserve army, this OT, social workers and psychologists, because I'm in a locked hospital and everybody anticipated there'd be an absolute swathe of COVID for patients and staff, but by some kind of miracle that didn't happen. And then after sort of some weeks, we just went back in the normal way, which actually I felt, well, the last few weeks have been rather stressful, but not to do with that in particular. I felt very lucky to have a job that I was going out to, because actually I'm not sure that I would have coped mentally by being at home all the time, you know, for myself. It's different for different people. Obviously, I would have to have managed, wouldn't I? Maybe found something in that. But I've been glad to be out and about. Yeah, yeah.
Were you worried about catching COVID?
No, no. Well, I mean, I wouldn't like to be suffering. I wouldn't like to be giving it to people.
No.
But for myself, no. I suppose, you know, I'm 66 now, 6th of July. I sort of often feel I've lived quite a long time already, you know, compared to many people. So I don't feel worried about that at all, no. I think also one's experience is conditioned a bit by what one did in this period, because I was out and about, and that in itself sort of encourages a certain amount of not being so anxious. Whereas some people who have been not out, they're probably, I know, are a bit more cautious. Not saying they shouldn't be cautious, but you know what I mean? It sort of conditions you, doesn't it? Yeah. What about you, Vajragupta? Were you out and about, actually literally at the Norwich Centre? Is the Norwich Centre open at all?
The Norwich Centre's just too small. I mean, we've just started now. You can have 6 people at a class, and that's it really. But we put everything online. I mean, I've been very busy with all that stuff, but all from home. Yeah.
Yeah, we're having 2 morning meditations, one at 7 and one at 8:30. Then we're having the evening classes and then the Saturday morning class. So there's quite a lot going on in Colchester.
Wow. Do you mean literally at the centre, Prasad Vedri?
No, Zoom.
By Zoom, yeah. I had a funny experience on Sunday because I was co-leading Padmasambhava Day, and we went into the theatre. Of course, people like Vajrasaki are going into the theatre, into the centre. It was the first time I'd been for months, and we were on the stage. We'd made a shrine, and I'd got a select number of order members so that we could be a group while we were Zooming. Do you see what I mean? Of course, it makes a difference. Yeah. And actually, mostly it was okay in a way, but by the end of the day, I felt so dislocated. Do you know what I mean? Because it was such also, it really brought up how things have changed just so much, and that Sangha experience isn't there in the same way. I felt quite, dislocated is the only word I can use.
That's quite funny. I feel exactly the opposite. I felt that we're more connected, the Sangha.
Right.
It's really interesting because lots of people who have difficulties with coming to the center, whether physical or, that they can't come for jobs or whatever, they actually have been, part of the Sangha all of a sudden really regularly.
Mm.
And that's, I think brought us all really close together.
It's very different for different people, isn't it?
Definitely.
We had our Padmasambhava day on Sunday as well. And I did a slideshow of his life with some commentary. So that worked quite well on Zoom.
Yes. You must be Zoom savvy then, Vajragupta, if you've managed to work out how to do a slideshow. I'm very impressed.
I have to do breakout rooms and all that. I do regularly 4 classes a week on the Zoom.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had the Padmasambhava day the week before, and did the puja. We did like a call and response with Tiranaga, him and me, and that worked really well. So everybody else could then, join in.
It's better, isn't it, when there's a sort of group. I really love that on the convention. The puja from the Baja caves was so moving, and the Mexican puja, if we can call it that, the puja from the Mexico Center, I should say. It was just very, very moving somehow to have a group of people.
You do need a group of people really to do puja on Zoom. I mean, we do one weekly, but the numbers have dropped off because, if you've just got somebody leading it and a responder, everybody else is muted. So it's not that easy really, which is a shame, isn't it?
I better have a quick wee, so I see you in a second.
Yes.
We don't have any restrictions on numbers to meet at all.
No.
What do you mean on Zoom?
Very lucky.
Do you mean on Zoom, dear Barbara? Is that what you mean?
No, we don't have to do anything on Zoom. We're in New Zealand.
She's in New Zealand.
You're in New Zealand, but I can't see any sunshine.
It's dark.
It's about 10 o'clock at night. That's why.
Oh, sorry, is it? Sorry, I'm so unaware of time zones. I think
I'm in bed.
Oh, fantastic.
Oh, is that where
Hello, Dira Prabha.
Yes, and Dira Mani is in New Zealand.
Hello, Dira Mani.
Oh, it's fabulous.
Hello.
I mean,
Hello,
Dira Prabha.
Dira Prabha and Dira Mani. Hello.
Hello,
Vajragupta.
Vajragupta.
Good to see you.
Yes. Have you seen Megas here as well?
Yes, I know that Meg is here.
But Megar has got, I mean, still dye my hair, I'm sorry to tell you, but Megar's hair has gone brown. I didn't recognize her because last time I saw her, not that I hardly know, but she's Amrichandra's preceptor, her hair was not brown. So I was going, is that Megar? Anyway, she looks gorgeous. Megar, if you're there, you look gorgeous.
Hello, Shantachitta.
Dira Prabha.
Hi, Dira Mani.
Hello. Are you still planning to try and get across the ditch, as we say, when they let the borders open?
If they open the border, I'll come and see you.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Yeah.
I mean, I know you want to get up to see Megar and Satchigandhi and Vajrashuri.
Yeah. I'm going to try and stay in New Zealand until the borders open to Australia.
Well, they're hinting some of it might be open before Christmas.
Yeah, one way only.
So is that between the two countries, people, or just explain?
You won't be able to come to Victoria probably, but you'll be able to go up the coast.
Just explain. So New Zealand and Australia people aren't allowed to, you can't cross countries like that, is it?
No, New Zealand hasn't got any COVID apart from in the what do you call it, quarantine isolation places. So
and
Australia
this is Chir
Hi,
Papa
Chir.
from Australia, and I've gone up to Queensland to escape COVID because Queensland has closed its borders to all the other states to try and stay safe. So I'm able to go have medical appointments and things here, try and get my body fixed up while I'm sort of relatively COVID safe. But we're hoping that the borders might be open at the end of the year. But each state has different ideas. So we've got all these different states in Australia, and Melbourne, has been one of the worst affected. So they've been in lockdown, and I was hoping people would be able to come up here and do retreats with me. We've got a whole house set. My daughter's bought a whole place for retreats and so on. But no, can't get through the borders.
Hi, Chittaprabha, how are you? It's Shantachitta.
Shantachitta. Oh, I've still got my gum infection. And I've been to the dentist, doctors, so finally now I've got to try and fix it with meditation. Last resort. Nearly 2 years now.
Gosh, that's a lot.
Good to see you, Shantachitta. Nagaraj to hear. Hello.
How are you, Shantachitta?
I'm very well, thank you. Yeah, okay.
Where are you, Shantachitta?
Brighton.
Brighton, okay.
Not too
Hi,
bad.
Shraddha.
Hello, Shraddha.
You don't know who's talking, do you?
I was just trying to work out how to get my voice on. Hi, Dira Prabha and Nagaraj. Much love to you both. And to everybody, in fact.
Hello, Shraddha.
Hello.
Vajragupta here.
Hello, Vajragupta. It's lovely to see you. Amazing.
Hi, it's Vijayashri here. Hi, Shraddha and others from the southern region. I was sorry I didn't get a chance to say goodbye before I moved away.
Hi, Vijay. How are you getting on, Vijayashri?
Yeah, really good. Yes, settling in here, Birmingham. I am now.
How are you?
Yeah,
Whereabouts?
I am. Kings Heath.
Oh, really?
Where everybody lives in Birmingham who's a Buddhist.
Of course. Yes. Oh, well, I know that part well.
Yes.
I used to live near Highbury Park.
Yeah, I live near Highbury Park. That's right. It's walking distance.
Yeah.
Your plants look very nice, Vijayashri.
Yeah.
Your plants look
I've
nice.
got a screen of hanging plants behind me. Actually, you gave me some of the cuttings.
That's nice.
Dira Prabha
Hey.
from Vajrashri.
Looks
Have a look
nice.
at my screen and see where I am.
Hey, it's Diffkey.
Yeah, I'm in my camper van.
How wonderful. I can see the salt marsh of North Norfolk.
Oh,
Indeed
wow.
you can.
Oh,
There you go.
I love it.
Nearly
And it's
empty
not got very
campsite.
many people camping.
About half a dozen.
You've got your
So-
usual spot.
Doggy.
Yep, I have.
Aren't you lucky?
Yeah. Bye.
Oh, thank you for showing me that.
You're very welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Lovely speaking to you, Vajragupta. And Padmajata.
I just want to say to
Morning, Pam.
Shraddha Deepa, we had Pam Samva Day on Sunday, and
Oh yeah.
Sangaketu had invited him to. We had a group of 6, sort of doing the puja and that sort of stuff. Anyway, Sangaketu was playing his flute with the mantra, and seeing you makes me remember so fondly your flute playing in the Lalita Vista retreat many years ago, led by Ratnavandana. That was one of the best retreats ever in my life.
Yeah. Thank you for remembering that. That's a lovely memory in my mind as well. Yeah.
To say it was a lovely memory in my mind as well, folks.
Ah, Ratnavandana.
Hello.
Okay, yeah. So, nice hearing people reminisce about retreats and things. So you're back with me now. And before the break, we were all part of one field of open heart, all waving to one another, rather than being limited to a small me in a box, sort of with those lines around that felt like they were creating a real sense of separation on what's actually a seamless screen. And yeah, it's a nice little illustration of the nature of things. We bring that sense of that's me in that box, separate from everything, all the rest, everyone else. And when we get lost in our box, that sense of solidarity that we have and that ability to empathize becomes pretty much unavailable to us. James tells me there's a question. Let's have it.
It has just dawned on me that although I happily and regularly receive love and care from people in my life, I can't ever remember in 10 years of connection to either of my refuge beings ever actually having a felt sense in my practice of receiving their love. Any thoughts? I'm quite a feeling type too.
Oh. Yeah, okay. Well, in your position, I would focus on the fact that they are, whatever yidams, 2 yidams they are love, they're embodiments of love and compassion. And I would bring that awareness into the practice, and I would ask them even to really make me aware of that love and compassion. And I would, if I was receiving light rays or blessings, or if there wasn't something in the practice, I would put something in where I felt very consciously that heart connection. They were sending love from them to me, to my heart, to my whole being, to my whole body as well. And then I would just notice if it wasn't getting through, if I couldn't feel it, I wouldn't be concerned, but I'd just get really interested in that, because somewhere it would mean I was telling myself something that prevented it from happening. There would have to be some kind of story, some kind of idea that meant that aspect of the practice wasn't unfolding in a natural way. So, yeah. I mean, I could sort of start speculating about what sorts of story, but I'll leave that to you just to explore your experience and see. And if you do that and it's still a mystery and a puzzle, then by all means, you could drop me an email or something. I'd be very happy to explore it. It's interesting. Okay. So we've just started looking at one cultivates a very powerful feeling of empathy with all beings. And usually I would just launch into all this. But I mentioned at the beginning that there were areas of exploration going on, and I thought I'd share those with you to start with. I will also mention that last year, as some of you know because you were on it, I did a retreat here at Adhisthana on Bodhicitta, and that retreat's available to listen to on Free Buddhist Audio, and it's also nearly all been transcribed, and I hope at some point before too long we can have the transcript available, because I'm kind of aware that in these 6 days there are going to be some things that I'm going to either skate over or not get to. So yeah, if you feel like this retreat's been helpful and you want to supplement it, or that there are things that could be filled out, you'll probably find some of them filled out in the recordings and the transcript of that retreat. Okay, yeah, so I mentioned that there'd been some discussion, and as so often in the order, it was started by Subhuti, sharing with some of us an article written by Analayo, who a lot of you will know. Some of his books are very popular in Triratna. And he wrote, in this case, Analayo wrote an article, I think in the Journal of Buddhist Studies, and it was called How Compassion Became Painful. And in it, he explores what he feels is a sort of change of emphasis over time in Buddhism, particularly as it's come into the West, from a compassion which used to be, as it were, more joyful, to a very empathetic compassion that he feels is being practiced in some parts of the West, which actually involves going quite deeply into the painful aspect of things. So I'll try and unpack some of that. We can make the article available for you. It's fit. Sorry? He just did, yes. Just with one. I'd forgotten I was in a Deva locally, I just wish and it just happens. Yeah, it's wonderful. Okay. It's fairly long, so you can, if you just want to get the gist of it, if you don't get it from me, which is perfectly possible, you can check it out and find it in the article. So he says that firstly, he makes a distinction, saying that pure empathy, where you feel into the suffering of another person, he wouldn't actually describe that as compassion in itself. He would describe that as a contemplation of dukkha. So that's an interesting distinction to make. And I know for myself, there have been times when I've been practicing and perhaps sending mantras out to people suffering in the world, and I have been completely overwhelmed from deep within with the suffering of the world. It has just, it's felt like one of those complete sort of heartbreaking experiences. And think, a very valuable experience when it's happened. Provided that you don't sort of hold on to it in the wrong kind of way. But what I've also noticed with that is that, you know, I'm in floods of tears about what's going on, and just the extent of the dukkha on all kinds of levels. But then 20 minutes later, I've got off my meditation cushion and I'm having breakfast, and it's sort of flowed through. So from that, I take it that what I'm looking for is the capacity to empathize and to experience, but without getting caught up. It's like when we were doing that meditation at the beginning of this session, there was the flow of experience, and we were caring for whatever arose, but we were allowing the flow to come and go. We weren't getting caught, we weren't getting attached anywhere. So I have other experiences where I'm feeling some suffering and I get caught up somehow subjectively. It triggers something in me. It triggers anxiety. It triggers righteous indignation. It triggers other experiences of grief somehow that I link it to. And then it sort of, it weighs on my heart in a particular way. So I find that there, as we go into this territory, certainly for myself, I find a lot of quite fine distinctions that I have to feel into, you know, to find what's helpful and what isn't. And Bodhicitta, you remember, traditionally has two aspects. It has a wishing aspect, you know, vow aspect, and an engaging aspect. So the heart wish for suffering to come to an end can be absolutely vast. There's no, yeah, from the point of view of the Bodhisattva path, yeah, we want all suffering to come to an end, whatever it is, wherever it is, whoever experiences it, whatever being experiences it. Then there's the engaging aspect, which is like carrying that wish, that aspiration into action. And you can see that in terms of, you know, practice of the 10 precepts. But traditionally, that aspect is talked of in terms of upaya. And upaya is skillful means, skillful methods. So there we are, we have this longing, this aspiration, this determination that suffering come to an end everywhere. And then there's the engagement with that suffering, which needs to be skillful. It needs to be skillful objectively in terms of what we do and how we interact with people, but it also needs to be really skillful internally in seeing what effect our engagement with suffering has on us, to find the right approach and to distinguish it from its kind of near enemies. So that's the sort of territory that we're in. So the first thing that Analayo does is he kind of separates out empathy, if you like, simple empathy, which he would say is a contemplation of dukkha. And in the traditional unfolding of practice, before you come to the Mula Yogas, you've done the 4 common preliminaries, and the last of those is a contemplation of the shortcomings or the sufferings of samsara. But the purpose of that is to help you produce renunciation. Yeah, it's to want you to feel like, no, the answer for me, the real refuge for me, isn't anywhere in creating any kind of situation, even mind creating any kind of world in which I am going to be happy. That can't work. Yeah. So there's the contemplation of dukkha, and then there's compassion, which Analayo says in the text includes contemplating the resolution of that dukkha, the healing of that dukkha, and that's always part of the experience. And we'll see this when we come on to the Tonglen. A very important aspect of that giving and receiving is that we see the suffering being relieved. We actually see beings becoming freer. We see them becoming happier. We see them becoming, finding the path to awakening and so on. Yeah. So that aspect needs to be there in our practice. So Analayo says that a contemplation of karuna, with that, he's sort of coming at things from his angle. That can lead you into dhyana, because what you're doing is you're contemplating suffering coming to an end. Yeah. So maybe it's interesting just to feel, well, in this practice, as with anybody's practice, we want all four noble truths. Yeah. If you just have the first one and the second one, if there was just suffering, well, then we might as well just bury our heads under the duvet and stay there. If there was just suffering and it was all caused by craving, but there was no solution to that, well, then we might as well carry on craving. Yeah. It's because there's the third and fourth noble truths that it's worth turning towards suffering in ourselves or in the world. So if we want a kind of complete practice, yes, we want both awareness of the suffering and awareness of the solution. We bring that awareness of the solution in when we practice within awareness of the refuge. That's already bringing in the third and fourth truths. But we also bring it in by imagining that suffering coming to an end. And some suffering, can actually, some situations can be helped and improved. And in any situation, we can imagine somebody finding their inner resources. We all have the potential for awakening. Even in some situation where somebody is on their deathbed and there's nothing to be done, we can imagine them supported by all the forces of awakening, actually finding states of mind, where they can become more at ease and relieved. So yeah, we can always imagine something which is of benefit. So Analayo is distinguishing between empathy and compassion. So he talks about compassion as, or empathy as feeling with another person, and compassion as feeling for another person. And to do the practice, we need both, but we need it in the right way, because this is like all Dharma practices. All Dharma practice and all Dharma views are antidotes to particular ways in which our mind has gone astray and tied itself in knots. So we have to make sure that however we do a Dharma practice is something which is going to set our mind in the right direction and help untie the knots rather than adding to them in some kind of way. Yeah. So we need to be really sensitive to ourselves to discover what's going to help us generally, or us in this particular meditation now, what we need to focus on. There may be days where really focusing on the extent of the suffering is going to be absolutely the wrong thing to do. There's going to be other times where it's going to be absolutely the right thing to do. There's a kind of a spectrum between staying sort of safely behind our ego barricade and not letting the world in, not feeling the suffering and not being able to empathize. That's one extreme. And then the other extreme is becoming over-identified and lost in the suffering. So it's a bit like yeah, you're a lifeboat person, yeah, and you receive a Mayday message, an SOS. There is a boat sinking out there. So one extreme is that you're sitting around with your other lifeboat people watching some good series on TV, and you think, oh no, it's probably a false alarm. No, they'd probably be all right. And you don't launch the lifeboat. Yeah, that's the staying in, defended, not allowing the reality of somebody else's suffering in at all, so that you're not motivated, you don't respond. But then let's say that you find that response of, there are people out there and they could end up in the water and they could end up dead, and I'm going to help. Let's say you find that response. It's all right, you launch the lifeboat and out you go, yeah, and you find this boat and it's sinking and there are people on it. So again, even when you get to that point, there are responses that can help and the responses that can't help. So one response that doesn't help is to just think, oh, okay, it's a very large boat, there are 400 of them, but we'll take them all off onto our lifeboat. Yeah. That doesn't work because you can't, the resources of your lifeboat can't cope with the amount of what needs doing, and you just sink. Yeah. And it doesn't help you and it doesn't help them. You've just ended up in the water too. Yeah. So part of the skillful means is really gathering the resources to have the help, to be able to give the help that's needed. Something else that you don't do is, out of fellow feeling with these suffering people, you get so kind of identified with them that you either throw yourself overboard or you actually make a hole in your own lifeboat, so that you really feel what it's like to be, in a ship that's going down. That really doesn't help either. So you can become over-identified in a way that incapacitates you from helping. So we have that kind of spectrum. So what we need is the empathy to feel with the person sufficiently to be motivated, to be brought into action, for our heart to open. Then we need to be well-resourced. We need to be practicing upaya. We need to be practicing skillful means. What is the best thing that I can do in this situation realistically? So we're not just, a kind of, in a naive way, heading for burnout and overwhelm and so on. And we don't want to be so overwhelmed that when we go into that situation, we sort of empathize in a way that actually leads back to self-reference. So that we're sort of stuck in the situation. Ideally, we want to be in a state of flow where, yes, when there's a need expressed, we feel that, we respond. We respond appropriately, we draw on whatever else is needed to respond, we do what we can, we engage with people, and then, okay, we let it go. And then there's the next one and the next one. And then we can get some sense with that flow of how the Bodhisattva's activity is described as their lila, their play. So happily moving from one lotus pond to the next like an elephant. Yeah. Okay, so that's in the time I've got available. That's maybe a start. So, yeah, please think about, reflect on your own practice and your responses to suffering, and in the Bodhicitta practice and outside. And if you have a chance, yeah, you could have a look at that article by Analayo. And if it raises questions, then yeah, let's explore them, because it would be good to get as clear about these issues as we can. Because yeah, we want an order that's really effective collectively as a bodhisattva. We want to really be of benefit to the world, and we want to be doing that in a way that's spiritually effective for us, and which doesn't leave us overwhelmed, overpowered, burnt out. We want to be able to help so many people who in the current situation are ending up, in those states or heading in that direction. Okay. So let's finish with some meditation, and if you have questions, you can email me, put them in the chat, and if you're in session 3, I expect we'll return to all this. So just being with however we are now. Noticing any sounds around. Aware of the body. How's the breathing? Noticing our mood, our emotional state. Noticing any thought trains, images. And gently, gradually, allowing awareness to move down towards the crown. Energy and awareness accumulating down where we're in contact with the earth, and down in the earth. Have an image of a large boulder that's just rolled down a hill, has come to rest on the ground. It will take a lot of shifting. Checking our posture. It's as comfortable and supportive as possible. Once more, feeling into the body. With kindness and care. And see if the whole body can be a field of kindly awareness. In which everything can arise, be cared for, and go its way. Being aware of the breathing. In the same way, all the sensations of the in-breath and the out-breath, all cared for. Letting them come, letting them go. Being aware of us all breathing together. Linked through our awareness of one another. So as we did on day one, we imagine ourselves all seated together. In a retreat mandala space, a heart space. And in the center of that heart space is the refuge. Embodied in the Buddha, or Yidam, whatever form it takes for us. And for a few minutes, with each in-breath, let's take in the love and support, all the resources we need from the refuge, and together breathe out whatever's needed to a situation or person or people, or more generally, to the suffering in the world. Taking in the love and spiritual power of the refuge. Supported by one another, all practicing together, all part of one meditation. Breathing out whatever's needed, whatever helps. Relief, healing, Dharma. Imagining and feeling the practice having its effect. Wherever those resources, that Dharma, that love goes. It transforms things. No, relaxing, nothing to do. Dedicating the merits. However we want to do that. Okay, thank you for that. And see some of you for session 3.